Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. The Philly season is upon us, but unfortunately, it's bad news after bad news after bad news, even though there was something solid sprinkled in there. Bryce Harper not being thrown on the 60-day IL is a positive, but it's unfortunately surrounded by Rhys Hoskins tearing his ACL. When you saw the play happen, we kind of figured, right? Non-contact, the way he went to the ground, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a baseball player trying to make a baseball play, and it just happens. You can't really hide away from something like that happening. It's just reality of the business. It just sucks because you are going to miss a right-handed bat that can hit 30 home runs and knock in a bunch of RBI. He can give you some pretty good, solid, professional at-bats, and you're going to miss that. He's a very controversial player. He stunk defensively. He made some huge, huge errors in big moments, but he also could carry you for weeks at a time. For as bad as the bad Rhys Hoskins was, the hot Rhys Hoskins was something else. It put this team in another dimension. He would carry the entire squad for games and games and games and games. He would give you 5 home runs where it was like, dude, this guy's on fire. It's another 3-run home run. It's another 2-run home run. It was nuts. And you're going to need players to step the hell up to be able to produce without him. Yo, Nick, welcome to the party. We need you. Hey, boom, show me some power. 13, 14 home runs is unacceptable. Do you hear me? It's unacceptable. So the question becomes, what do you do over at first base? And I think there's some obvious ones. Derek Hall against right-handed pitching is an obvious. I'm not ready to tell you that I feel comfortable with a lefty Derek Hall full season go have at it kid. There's too much of, I don't know, there's too much optimism. Not that I don't want people to be happy, but we took calls all day long on the best show ever, and he already is given the nickname Long Ball Hall. Long Ball will be fine. Long Ball will hit 260 with 30 home runs. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Look, I want that to be true. I want that to be the case, but you're not basing that off of anything legitimately. If he can't hit lefties, which there's not enough of a sample size for me to tell you he is going to hit lefties, there's no way just against righties he's going to hit 260 and 30 homers. It's just outrageous to think that that's the case. Here's what I think is the right move heading into the season. You give him every opportunity to have success. If it ends up not panning out, Dave Dombrowski has to get creative. I'm not against having Alec Bohm move to first base. I'm not against Edmundo Sosa playing third when there's a left-handed starter on the mound. I'm cool with that. Quite frankly, I expected if Rhys Hoskins was to be healthy this season that he would leave at the end of the year. You would not re-sign him, and Bohm would be your first baseman moving forward because I'm just not ready to commit to Alec Bohm as your pure third baseman as the Phillies continue to, kind of make runs year after year. I'm not bought into it yet. Sorry. I know that might frustrate some of you out there, but I just don't believe that that's what he is. So if you do that against lefties, all right. But this does get a little weird because Brandon Marsh is your center fielder, but he struggles against lefties. And it seemed during spring training that the message was Edmundo Sosa would start taking some reps out in center field so then they can try and split some sort of platoon. If there's a righty on the mound, if there's a lefty on the mound, then that would give Edmundo Sosa a chance to get his bat into the lineup. It becomes a little bit more difficult. Now, you could put JT Realmuto over at first base at times, but right now, you're banged up behind the plate. Garrett Stubbs was dealing with some issues throughout the World Baseball Classic. Marshawn isn't back yet. He's dealing with some injuries. So there's a lot happening right now. Ranger Suarez isn't feeling good. Andrew Painter and his arm problems were a story not too long ago. So you're dealing with a lot. Here's the most impressive part of it all, though. With what Dave Dombrowski has built, And with the addition of Trey Turner, with all of this happening, I still feel good about them competing, which is nuts. It tells you about how the roster is built. Schwarber, Trey Turner. I still think Bohm gives you good stuff. I want more, but he still gives you good stuff. There's a lot here to work with. It's just hard for me to go in with expectations that Derek Hall is a no-brainer and he'll be fine. I think he'll have good moments. I think he'll hit home runs. I think he'll give you that pop. But I don't know if I can rely on it for 162. At the end of the day, if I had to choose between who plays first base majority of the time this season, between Alec Bohm, Derek Hall, or somebody from the outside, I think Dave Dombrowski at some point makes the addition. Now, I don't know if it's anything flashy. I have no idea. CJ Cron's a name you constantly hear. I don't know if it's going to be something like that. Teams are going to try and win until they can't, and then there's trade deadline type of moves. That's so deep into the season. I know Luke Voit is a name that was thrown around, but he had about 22 homers hitting around 15-ish, 220. I looked a little bit earlier. It was in that range off the top of my head. But that's what I think Derek Hall is. Luke Voit would just be a right-handed version of that. And maybe that's what they do. Maybe that's the move Dave Dombrowski elects to do. I don't know. You have some options. Schwarber could play first base, I guess, if you wanted to do that. I don't know if the Phillies want to start moving everybody around. And now they're dancing around the diamond before you even get into your first game of the regular season. This is a bummer. This is brutal. It's just crushing. He was so important to the depth of this lineup. Every single player matters when you talk about stretching out the 1 through 9. You remove Rhys, you remove Bryce Harper early. Real quick, I want to make sure you know, I still feel solid about them winning a bunch of baseball games, and I still think they could do a tremendous job, and ultimately, Bryce is going to eventually return, and that's going to make them that much stronger. I feel solid. But it is a lot different when Rhys is no longer there. If Nick Castellanos isn't playing amazing baseball like we know he can, this is an issue. Because now that's two bodies that are removed from what stretches this lineup out to be deep. I've had a lot of you envision this when speaking about this team in the past. But put yourself on the mound as an opposing pitcher and think of Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, Nick Castellanos, Alec Bohm. Then you see Stott. Then you see Marsh. Am I missing anybody? I don't know. Maybe. What did I say? Trey, Schwarber, JT, Rhys, Castellanos, Bohm, Marsh, Stott. And any variation you go with them? Okay. So there's your guys. You take away Rhys. And if Nick isn't Nick, it gets a little worse. Still a lot to go through, but makes it a little worse. We spoke to Jason Stark, one of the best to do it. He goes, I haven't really been impressed with the swing that I've seen from Nick Castellanos. I still think there's some things there that worry me when trying to project if he turns the page, if trying to project if, there's more life in his game. Oh, don't do this. No, don't do that. You would think getting 1 year under your belt would be solid. But the question becomes, what if he starts to struggle for that first week, that second week? He gets off to a start that you start to think. It's in your head. Bad thoughts continue. Now you just spiral into this weird spot. I don't know. Look, I know it kind of sounds like I'm being very, very negative because I'm not the highest on Derek Hall, and I don't know if Nick Castellanos will be able to spot in 30 home runs. Now, other guys, I don't think Schwarber is going to hit the same amount of home runs as he did last year. With that said, the addition of Trey Turner is sensational. You watched his bat in the World Baseball Classic. You even saw what he brings to the table defensively. And this team stunk defensively last year. Every single glove and the improvement on that side of the diamond is huge. You lost a bunch of games because you were terrible on the defensive side of the diamond. So there's some things that I worry about, and there's some questions that I have. But ultimately, I still think that there's a lot there. It's weird. It's weird. I know it's a very uncomfortable position to be in because there's a lot you have to work around. But I believe in Dave. Last year, it was Nick Maton. It was Sosa at times, who he returned. And think about that. That was an acquisition. And that's what I'm thinking about with the first base thing. Edmundo Sosa was prior to the trade deadline. But that's the type of guys he finds. That's the type of additions he makes. I got so much belief in how he is going to incorporate himself in this to have this team where they need to be. Even with the adversity, even with the tough times, even with some guys that maybe I don't think are going to be able to be what we want them to be. He'll find a way, or other guys will step up. Stott in another year. I actually, out of all the things I've mentioned, I feel the best about Alec Boehm's power maybe transitioning this season. And seeing more of that. That's what I have the most faith in when it comes to him or Castellanos or Derek Hall. Think about that. I would have never thought in a billion years. But when you look at his body frame, it just seemed inevitable that at some point it would show up. Especially now that he's where he is. He's the most comfortable he's been. He got sent down in years past to have to rebuild his entire game. He was lost in the batter's box, and he had no idea what he was doing defensively. Last year was a good spot for him to kind of get his feet in the ground after the whole I hate this town thing or I hate this place. That's what I have most faith in out of all of them. We'll see. Losing 30 home runs, though, is something that you can't just take for granted. And it seems like there's some Rhys Hoskins haters out there that feel like it's not that big of a deal, that anyone can do what he can do. It's not the case. While his struggles were problematic in the field, you can't just slot anybody in the first base position and think that you're going to get that level of production at the plate. Since making his debut on August 10th in 2017, Rhys Hoskins is 12th in home runs with 148 and 16th in RBI with 405. That's what you're trying to replace. Here's more. Since 2018, 7 players have had 4 seasons of 25 or more homers and at least 110 OPS plus. Aaron Judge, Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Matt Olson, Kyle Schwarber, and you guessed it, Rhys Hoskins. I also think that there's an element here of leadership. Over the years, leadership alone being just Rhys Hoskins, it wasn't enough. Not that it was his fault, but we've seen with the clubhouse, when the failures were real and they continued to sink, when it was late into the summer and it was September, they just didn't know how to win. They would fold. And there were a few leaders in there that, once again, not their fault, but something wasn't clicking. The addition of Kyle Schwarber with Rhys's voice, I think, changes it. And now that you have others in there, and the addition of Rhys, it's like the combination of all of them together was a lot different than when it was just Rhys and maybe Andrew McCutchen alone. And a little bit of Bryce Harper in there, but he's more of a on-the-field type of guy. Clearly, whatever they had, it just didn't mesh well. Well, I feel based off of last year and how they came together as one, how they learned how to win because they didn't know how to do that yet, Rhys played a role. And losing his voice day to day in that clubhouse, when you package his leadership with all the other stuff that I've mentioned, all the other players that are currently in this clubhouse, not in years past, but this one, it hurts. Let's take a quick break here so I can tell you about Knack. Knack is fantastic. I use it for my iPad. I use it for my laptop. They make fantastic bags. It's a hybrid bag for every day, for work, for travel. It's a laptop bag with fully padded interior to keep your electronics safe. It looks professional, it looks stylish, and it adapts to your everyday life. It is the first backpack that expands for more capacity when you need sleek exterior, organized interior, and professional appearance to help you look your best at the office or out in the real world. Get a Knack bag today and stop worrying about how you look when carrying your life essentials. Check out the link down below in the description, and for a limited time, you can get a free TSA-approved lock with your purchase. Just add the TSA lock to your cart with the Knack bag of your choice, and make sure you check out the link down below. It has changed my life forever. I just want to make sure that this is being interpreted the right way. Because even I, as I talk out loud, I feel like this is coming off way more negative and way more sour than I initially envisioned. I want it known that you can't just snap your fingers and get what Rhys Hoskins brings. It's a lot. These guys don't grow on trees. I'm actually going back and forth with myself wondering, okay, is this a position now? Weirdly enough, not that this matters because there's so much time and so much baseball to talk about until we get to this point, but because he's getting injured on the contract year, I'm sure Scott Boras is pissed off, but does this give the Phillies an opportunity to actually sign him next year to bring him back? Because the fat ticket won't be as much compared to if he stayed healthy. Or, knowing what he's done, is it a no-brainer that someone else scoops him up and is willing to pay him anyway? Because, well, look at all the seasons, look at the RBI, look at the walks, look what he does for a team. We've seen him bat second, we've seen him bat fourth, we've seen him do so many things. Professional at-bats, working a nice walk, important. Getting someone else up there with the man on base, 2 outs, late into the game. Or he just puts one over the seats. I don't know. Only time will tell. But I don't think Derek Hall just automatically easy. I don't think Bohm going over automatically easy. You're going to need players to make up for those 30. So if it's Bohm giving you 25, and he had 13, 14 last year, so you got to get 12 or so. Well, if you had 13, 12, you're asking him to almost double. Castellanos, I need you to double. It's a tall order. I feel the most confident in Bohm doing it, weirdly. So that's real. At the same time, though, Trey Turner is an added layer. Your bullpen is an added layer. I love this bullpen. I love Seranthony Dominguez. I love Jose Alvarado. I love Gregory Soto. I love what they have built back there. And that's going to help out in certain games. And that's going to be why you win at times. Where instead of Bohm giving you that home run to win you the baseball game, game 3 of a 3-game set where it's split 1-1, you need the victory, you're on the road. So maybe it's not Bohm that night, but it's Soto. Or it's anybody else. Or Nick Nelson in relief. Falter. Struggles a little bit. Only gives you 3 innings. Here's Nick Nelson who can give you a couple shutout innings. Get you to the back end of the bullpen. You win the game. 4-3. You were down 4-0. Or excuse me, 3-0 though. You get 4 runs. But Nick Nelson held the fort down. Kept it at 3. Ate up a couple innings. Got you to the back end. While Trey Turner knocked in a few runs. Or Schwarber hit a bomb. They'll find ways. And I think a lot of last year, figuring it out on the fly, going through that run, is going to pay dividends when they're in uncomfortable spots, when they're in tough positions, when they're facing a hard time, when it gets difficult. Because they've done it in the past. And it's going to be a very competitive division. All right. So, Let's hear from the fans out there, the Philly fans, and hear their thoughts on what just happened, because it's been a lot. There's been a lot of right hooks to the jaw here to the Phillies fans. No Andrew Painter, which sucks because I want to see him dominate. Ranger hasn't been able to throw the way we need him to here in the spring. I have faith that Falter can do okay and hold the fort down. I don't know what Strom's going to be. But with Wheeler, Nola, Taijuan Walker, still a lot there. It's been a very odd day for me. A little bit of the good, a little bit of the unknowns, but I still feel good. Anyway, calls. Let's do it.
Yeah, Rhodes, heartbroken over this Rhys Hoskins news, man. It sucks. I knew as soon as I saw that injury, there was no way it wasn't going to be serious, but had to have that little bit of hope. I'm not saying it's over for the Phillies, far from it, but just coming out of the high of how great the WBC was and the show unlocking tonight, man, I'm still hype on baseball, and I'm just sucks, man. It really does.
It's a bit of a Debbie Downer, no doubt. I think once we see the team take the field, maybe after the first week, because it's still doom and gloom, even watching them play the day after, and you could see that some of the reporters who are there and they're watching the team play, they could tell that the atmosphere has absolutely died down a little bit because there's like a black cloud surrounding them at this moment, and it's hard not to. Rhys's impact, just his presence, goes a long way with that core, with that group. He's been through this city and through the tough times here. He's battled through it. There was a time where he was the big star and the big thing that we were keying in on, going, this guy's going to help us turn it around. And you get Bryce Harper, and now you add Schwarber, you add all this down, Trey Turner, you get Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola still here. It's like, between him and Aaron Nola, he's been through a lot. And you finally have a chance to build off of a World Series run, and he's going to miss the whole year. It's terrible. And you even mentioned it. There was a little bit of time there where you had hope and you held on to something. Maybe he'll be okay. I thought the same for maybe a half hour. Listening to Rob Thompson on the broadcast during the game when he was getting asked about it, he was telling the broadcast that he heard he was walking on it. So he's in the locker room, he's in the clubhouse, he's walking on it. I'm like, that's, weird. Maybe there's something to that. But I've seen Carson Wentz throw a touchdown pass with his knee being completely ripped apart and torn into pieces. We've seen people before do stuff with ACL tears. The non-contact, the way he fell to the ground, and there was actually a moment where he was sitting, and he was sitting up, and you could tell by the way his eyes were staring at the ground. His body language read, I can't believe it. And it seemed like he was dazed and out of it, almost like blacked out. Couldn't believe what happened. Couldn't believe what he just went through. He knew something was terribly wrong. He goes, my season's over. He was staring there. You know when you look at someone and they're just stuck looking at something and they zoned out? He was zoned out, probably processing contract year and everything else right before the season begins. Nothing you could do about it, though. Guys were getting hurt in the World Baseball Classic. Jose Altuve. Guys were getting hurt, hit with pitches. Spring training, you're getting ready for the season. Edwin Diaz celebrating. I saw this take, which to me is outrageous, but the way he was backing up to try and play the bounce, if Rhys would have went forward to play the bounce, it's like, come on. You're going to nitpick every single thing? It was a baseball play. He was trying to read the hop. Sometimes players let it take that extra hop, play it, and then run the first base. No, I'm not going to try and tell you that Rhys Hoskins plays every ground ball 100% correctly. Trust me. That's the last thing I would try and explain to people. He's not the first person I'm watching defensive film on. At the same time, no. I don't think he was problematic in this happening. This is just how the sports world goes, unfortunately. But yeah, I saw that take, believe it or not. Crazy, isn't it?
What's going on, Bird? It's just awful feeling seeing Rhys Hoskins go down out for the year. Huge loss for the lineup. I mean, if Castellanos doesn't pick it up, I mean, you could be in trouble. Harper out half the year, Castellanos still being bad, and no Rhys. Like, Castellanos has to step up now for this offense to be close to as effective as it was last year. And we'll get to see, I guess, we'll get to see Derek Hall, how good at fielding he is. And maybe he can figure it out versus lefties, I don't know. I think Edmundo Sosa will get a lot more playing time, too. But I also think Dave will probably trade for a first baseman at the deadline. But this sucks to see Rhys go down. I hope it's not his last time in a Phillies uniform. That would be terrible. Sucks for him, too, man. He could have had a major payday after the season, but...
Yeah, he would have. He would have. I was with you following along with the Dave Dombrowski maybe making a move for a first baseman. You said at the deadline, I think it might be even before, depending on how long the leash is for Derek Hall. I don't know how long the leash is going to be, but he struggled big time against lefties last year. And I know there were some hits throughout spring training where people got a little excited because it was against a lefty and all. You're going to have to prove it to me over a long window of time for me to fully buy into it. I think against righties, though, and you're going to see a ton of righties, so it's not as if he's not going to have those chances to be in the batter's box against the righties. I think he can hit a lot of home runs, and he'll be a part of this. Big difference between being a part of this and being an everyday player. Huge difference. I just can't buy into that right now. So Castellanos, in your eyes, needs to deliver. I agree. So does Bohm. It's hard to demand Schwarber to have the same amount of home runs as last year. But you also touched on Bryce, right? You said Bryce coming back halfway through the... I don't know when Bryce is coming back. I'm feeling more optimistic about him returning sooner rather than later. Because with the 60-day IL, you would have to imagine if they didn't anticipate him at all at some point. I'm just saying. It's weird to not put him on the 60-day IL. Makes me wonder. And then, which I was very angry about, why it took him so long to get the surgery to begin with. Well, if he's on a good path and he's on a faster track with his dry swings, with getting some live pitching, hitting off the tee, soft toss, you name it, all the variables to get him back on track. If he's beating the timeline that they originally anticipated, just think about what would have happened if he got it right away, if he didn't wait a long period of time. I was very aggravated. I didn't know why. Why? What are we doing here? What is going on? Why is this happening? Every single series matters. Every single game matters in a highly competitive NL East. You better win a damn series against the Mets this year. Hell, I demand you to win the division. Even against the Braves. They're not the same without Freddie Freeman. You watched Ronald Acuna Jr. be lazy as hell out in that outfield in big moments before. Not the same leadership, not the same culture. Go in there and take it. Take that division. Every game that Bryce misses is that much more difficult, especially with all the other areas that you're banged up with. So if he's going to come back sooner rather than later, that's great. But it's hard for me to not think about where would he be if he got it sooner. I'm just saying. I know, maybe that's me being outrageous and unfair, but that's the way my mind works.
Hi, I'm calling about Rhys Hoskins and his injury. I'm absolutely gutted for him, man. I loved watching him since he started playing here, and it's just so brutal to see potentially his time in Philadelphia end the way that it's going. But now you gotta rely on Derek Hall for some games. I'm cool for anything that they do as long as it's not constantly moving around Alec Bohm, because I don't think that would be doing the best to get the best out of that particular player if you're constantly moving him from first to third base. I do trust Derek Hall, and I do trust Edmundo Sosa, but there really isn't any way around this. Dave Dombrowski should be looking at right-handed infielders.
Okay, so right-handed first baseman, and then you're going to platoon with Derek Hall. Is that what you mean there? With the Bohm thing, I've seen that take. I've seen the Alec Bohm tape. You don't want him moving around the diamond. See, here's my issue. I thought that when Rhys left here, Bohm would be the first baseman anyway. I don't think Alec Bohm's a third baseman. I don't trust that. while he makes some good plays, and every time he makes the play, it's like, wow, see, Alec Boehm is a third baseman. For all the great plays, he makes miserable, horrendous, pathetic third base plays that I can't live with. I just don't think that you legitimately have a stud over at third base in Alec Boehm. I want someone better at third base. I need someone more reliable legitimately over at third base with that glove. I don't mind Alec Boehm, the hitter, if he gives me more pomp, but I think he's more of a first base. I just don't think he's a third baseman, really. Regardless on what other position he would play, which is really only first base in my eyes. I don't think he's a third baseman. I don't think he's a third baseman. So I thought Rhys would be gone after this year if he played this season out healthy. And Boehm would play first base anyway. If he can't handle moving over to first base and stepping up for his teammates, let's go. Play where you got to play. And Mundo Sosa isn't bitching when he's playing short, when he's playing third, if he's playing center. Don't be too fragile. If we need you, we need you. I can't be babying Alec Boehm. For some reason, he gets a pass a little bit at times, and I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. If we need you at first, go play first. I don't think that's unfair. All right, if I didn't get to your call, as we know, the Philly season is upon us. So, I'll keep them in the Phillies folder here. Because this Rhys Hoskins thing, it's not going away. It's a hot topic here. And it changes the identity of this team, especially early. I want to thank everybody so much for hanging out with me. I love you guys so much, and I'll catch you on the next show.